Okay, so this is the Sony INZONE H6 Air open back gaming headset that comes in at $200. And it's very similar to the Sony MDR MV1, which, for anybody who's been paying attention, is already a headphone that people have been using for gaming because of its unreasonable comfort and a sound signature that works extremely well for this application. It's just that the H6 Air comes in at half the price. So the question is, does the H6 Air just save you $200? Is this equivalent performance to the MV1 just at a much lower price tag? Well, in today's video, that's what we're going to find out. So let's get going. Okay, quick disclaimer here. This was sent over by Sony for us to check out for review. Big thanks to Sony for sending it in. And of course, I haven't been paid to say anything in particular about this headphone, and all thoughts and opinions here are my own. So the first thing to know about the H6 Air is that this is one of the absolute best ergonomically and mechanically designed headphones that I have ever come across. This is ridiculously comfortable. And the same was true about the MV1. And it's like they took that idea and were like, yeah, we're gonna make it even more comfortable, potentially. I say even more comfortable because it's actually a little bit lighter than the MV1. But there are also some differences to do here with the headband design and the cup attachment points. The headband design is just this bar across with a suspension strap underneath, reminiscent of the AudioQuest series of headphones, so the AudioQuest Night Owl and Nighthawk. This kind of thing worked really well on those headphones, and it works really well here. It can be adjusted by pushing in the buttons on the side of the suspension strap, and then it can be slid up and down like that. This is a fantastic mechanism, and I believe this is going to accommodate a wide range of different heads, and it's also very comfortable up top while keeping the headphone extremely lightweight. And if you compare that to the MDR MV1, this doesn't have the suspension strap, it's just a single piece across the top. They also added a spring-loaded mechanism here for the pivot where the rod attaches to the cup, and this helps keep the headphone centered vertically on the head while also being able to accommodate a wide range of different head sizes and shapes. You do then also get full cup swivel. You can potentially wear this asymmetrically, but I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue because there's a little bit of resistance here when you do move the cups from side to side. So this is overall an incredibly well thought out system for its mechanical design. It's going to fit a wide range of heads, and it's going to be extremely comfortable on a wide range of heads. And this is lighter even than the Sony MDR MV1, which is already extremely light. For the cup build quality, this is actually metal, and this is another one of those headphones where when you look at it and you pick it up and you feel it doesn't feel like there's really all that much to it. It's almost like you could say this feels cheap, but then like when you take a closer look at it and you actually start to feel the materials, you realize it's not, where it has this lightweight cup design that is still metal and feels really durable and robust and sturdy. Now the baffle design is very similar to the MV1's. The pads are slightly different though, and this is where the MV1 pads are a little bit nicer. And while the MV1 pads feel a little bit deeper, the overall opening for the ear is pretty similar. One thing to note is that my ear does touch this nylon material here, but it's so soft and almost like cushiony in a way that I don't find this to be annoying at all. And when I wear this headphone, there's this thing that happens where my ear gets kind of tucked inside the under part of the pad, and the same thing happened on the MV1, and it's a really nice feeling. Like you feel like this is a proper around ear headphone that ensconces you into it, and it's a really comfortable headphone to wear, not just for having it, you know, be on your head for a long period of time, but also the way that it fits around your ear is really nice, despite the fact that it does come into contact with your ear in a couple of places, especially if you have larger ears like I do. There's obviously a microphone here, and it just connects to the side of the headphone like this. I really like this, and I prefer this over the way that other mics get implemented where the microphone actually is part of a cable. Like for example, the way the Asus Kithara's microphone connects, it's part of a cable system where you have to use that specific cable. With this headset, the microphone is a standalone separate thing, plugs directly into the side of the cup, and then you get this cable, which is actually a really nice cable. Doesn't have any real memory or springiness to it, and this just plugs into the bottom. And so you get your headphone audio and your mic audio all through one cable. And then you also get this dongle here, which this singular cable plugs into, and that's how you get your audio path. This dongle also provides access to the INZONE hub. So theoretically, you could use this with a different device, but if you want to get access to the INZONE hub software that Sony provide, you would need to use the dongle. You also get a mic mute button at the top here, and you get a volume wheel at the bottom. It's very easy and convenient to use. Again, I've been saying great things about the ergonomic design here. The Sony MDR MV1 is already an extremely comfortable headphone. The H6 takes many of those good ideas and adds this suspension style headband, which depending on your head may be an improvement even over the MV1 for comfort. I will note the strap here is rather narrow in comparison to the headband piece for the MV1. So that might be an area where they could have made a different decision. But because this is so lightweight, I don't think anybody's going to have any trouble with this on the top of the head. So again, I don't have any issues with this, but I think even people with smaller heads are going to have no problem wearing this for long periods of time. Other companies looking at this review, looking at this video, make headsets and headphones like this for their ergonomic and mechanical design. This is great. More of this should exist, please. Now, let's talk about the sound quality here. And if you just look at the baffles here, comparing the MV1 and the H6, you can see that they're very similar. You can see the baffle design that they're going with here, and they're doing similar things. I mean, this is the same driver platform, and unsurprisingly, the sound quality is very similar. They're both slightly V-shaped with a more gradual sloping response to the bass. So instead of having a really distinct sub-bass shelf or something like you might find with a Harman kind of sound signature, the MV1 and the H6 Air go for more of a downsloped response with some treble emphasis. And so I was kind of critical of the MV1 for having this rather aggressive treble presentation at around 6 kilohertz. And the same is true for the INZONE H6 Air. And I'm going to say right now that the H6 Air is basically like the MV1, just slightly not as good. So for the overall sound signature for the treble, that's where the H6 Air is too much. They both have this sloping V-shaped bass and treble emphasized sound signature. So what does this sound like? Well, with music, this is going to sound a little bit more on the colored side of things. There's this kind of vividness to the response, and I've talked about how V-shaped sound signatures can sometimes do this. Again, enhancing the bass and treble. But it's not done in a way where the mid-range is really lost. In fact, the lower mid-range is also pulled forward a little bit, making it so that it's a bit more versatile for a wider range of recordings for that range in particular. It loses versatility a little bit for the treble, and that's just because the treble is just a bit unhinged for me. Like when I'm listening to vocal recordings, I hear more sibilance on the H6 Air than I do on the MV1. And when I was doing my live stream that I do for the member streams, I found that like the first thing I noticed was that the H6 Air just sounds a bit bright. It's not bright overall because again, it has lots of bass to come through and kind of balance out the brightness. But the first thing that I noticed was that the cymbals are emphasized. You know, the snare drums are emphasized. The sibilant tones like the S's, F's, and T's and the sh sounds are emphasized. Anything that occupies those upper frequency ranges are going to be pulled forward in the mix and in a way that is generally a bit too much for me. But with that said, it's not like this is an unintelligent way of doing a V-shaped response, and it doesn't make this headphone sound lean or shouty or glary in any meaningful way, because the way the bass and low mids are integrated into the presentation, it gives enough body and tone there to kind of be the ballast for this extra brilliance and brightness that this has. So I think for anybody looking for a V-shaped kind of sound signature, this is going to be a good option to choose. It's not one that I would say is like contrasty. It's more almost like an audiophile sense of V-shaped, where you kind of get more of that sense of richness and euphony for the low frequency information, plus the bass and the sub bass. Whereas if I contrast this with something like a DT770, the bass and treble are way more disjointed from the rest of the response when it comes to those exaggerations. So that's something that this is doing interestingly, again, similar to the MV1, which is a shame. I got to be honest. The only thing I really wanted them to fix with the MV1 was to make the treble less spicy, and they went the other direction. So that's kind of a bummer. The mid-range is pretty similar. It's a little bit better on the MV1, but I think for most people, it's going to be pretty similar between the two. Now, that's how it is with music, but this is a gaming headset, and I spent so much time putting it through its paces, beating my head against the wall in deadlock, because you guys care about how this is for competitive stuff, and that's a competitive game that I play, so that's what I did. And I gotta say, without any kind of EQ or anything like that, the sound signature that you get for the H6 Air is kind of perfect for that kind of game. Not only does it exaggerate or draw an outline around the footstep sounds when you need to hear them, but it also sounds super fun for any kind of gunshot sounds. I noticed this with basically any of the games that I was playing where there were gunshot sounds. There's enough meat and gumption down low from the exaggerated bass and low mid presentation that this has to kind of balance out that crispness from the treble. It feels fun and exciting and engaging every time you hear it. And it was enough where I kept thinking to myself, like, yeah, as much as I am the kind of person who dials in my headphones perfectly with EQ, I could see this headphone in its default form for competitive games or games that have gunshot sounds or explosion sounds, because it's just so much fun in those moments. Because I'm not worried about sibilance as much there. Like, yes, there are some colorations here for sure, but I'm not as worried about that when I'm just having fun listening to gunshots and explosions and, you know, getting my immersion on. And when it comes to the ultra sweaty competitive play, despite the bass being emphasized here, I don't find this to be done in such a way where it obscures precision for things like footsteps. I feel this actually does a pretty good job of balancing immersion and competitive precision. So when you're loading into a competitive match and you're wearing the H6 Air, you will not be limited by the bad audio quality that everybody else on your team is using, and that's the reason why they suck and why they deserve to be flamed. And conveniently, the H6 Air also lets you do that very well with the microphone. So this is a great way to tell all of your teammates that they suck and that it's all their fault for why you're losing the game. It's nothing to do with, you know, you being bad at the game. It's all their fault. Speaking of the microphone, this is what the microphone sounds like. So this is what the microphone sounds like. In my opinion, it's okay. It gets the job done, and I think it's better than some of the alternatives that I've tried. It's still not as good as a standalone microphone, of course. It still doesn't sound amazing, and it's something that I wish could be improved with these types of devices. But at the very least, it shouldn't be clipping as hard as some other mics that I've tested recently, like what I found with the Asus Cathara. And just anecdotally, I had no problems hurling insults at the people I was playing with. So if that's something that you really care about, this will work great. So I would like it for manufacturers to put a little bit more effort into the sound quality of the microphones they put on these devices to make it so that every gaming match doesn't sound like absolute ass. So there might occasionally be reasons not to mute absolutely everybody in your lobbies, because, I mean, good lord, it's just like endless clipping. It's terrible. And speaking of which, Sony has given you some automatic gain control with the INZONE Hub app, which is a nice feature. There are a couple of nice features with the INZONE Hub. I will say this should have been parametric EQ, as it always should be, but if you're using this with a PC, you can just download Equalizer APO for free anyways, and so you should be doing that regardless. This type of EQ is extremely limited, and it's not good enough to be able to be fine-grained about the adjustments that you want to make, which is something that on this headphone I think would be good to have given its treble response. Now, one thing you'll note here is that on the EQ section of the app, you get standard and immersive. And immersive is basically just a make it sound bad button. I don't recommend using this really at all. It just makes things sound smoothed over and blunted and, quite frankly, not that immersive. I don't see a scenario where I would ever use this. It's a digital signal processing of some kind, and it never made anything sound better. It just made things sound a bit duller and more muffled and just not great. But I think the bigger issue here is that the spatialized sound personalization option here on the right-hand side of this app is just straight up terrible. This is a uniquely horrible experience, and it's not even one that really makes sense in theory, because the way this works, it's not actually to do with the 360 reality object-based audio that is specific to content that you might be listening to. Instead, this is meant to interpret how your physical ear filters the sound based on an image that you take of your ears, so that it can apply a digital signal processing effect to augment the response in such a way that might be similar to how you would interpret localized sound rather than sound helmet sound, which is what you get with headphones. The problem is, with headphones, when you move your head, the sound goes with you. So there's no head tracking going on in this device whatsoever. And how the brain interprets localized sound sources, or that sounds are over there, or behind you, or in front of you, is in large part because of how the sound changes as you move your head. And when you're getting that sound from one specific direction, baked into the interpretation of that sound source is all the location-based information that occurs when you even just move a fraction of a millimeter in one direction or another, right? If you just move a little bit, the sound actually changes. So the response at your ear actually changes based on that, the location of that relative to your head and ears. And with headphones, you don't get any of that. There's an effect there, and people might find that interesting, but to describe the effect, it's as if it just took all of the treble and dialed it up like crazy, massively emphasized the bass, and then all of the treble-based information is like right in your eyeballs, and nothing else exists. Nothing else exists. So it's this really tinny, hollow, weirdly reverby kind of effect that doesn't actually make things sound like there's a deeper or larger sense of localization going on. Not even at all. It just makes it sound like it's extremely colored in a bad way. So I do not recommend using this feature, and I don't recommend buying this headphone for the sake of this feature. Quite frankly, when it comes to the idea of spatialized sound or immersive audio of any kind, I'd like to see Sony go back to the drawing board and come up with something entirely different, because this ain't it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get the H6 Air, because I would probably take this over every gaming headset that's currently available in the market, including the Asus Kithara. Now, I liked the Kithara. I thought the sound quality was actually better than what you get with the H6 Air, but it's for comfort reasons. It's for the overall goodness of the chassis design, and it feels nice on the head, and the default sound signature here is super appropriate for gaming. So I think they've done something really smart with this design. I would probably even take this over, like for gaming specifically, I would take this over most of the audiophile options as well. It's not wireless, so it doesn't have that advantage like what you get with the HyperX Cloud 3 Wireless or some of those headphones, or the Maxwell. But the industrial mechanical design for this headphone is so good that I don't think it matters. So, in conclusion, this is an MV1 for gamers. I think the MV1 is still a bit better. It sounds a bit better. It's a bit more refined, and it's a bit more premium overall. But it's $200 more expensive. It's twice the price. So for that reason, the H6 Air gets a very strong recommendation from me, and it's one that I absolutely love using. So as usual, I'm going to give you guys a ranking for this headphone, and I'm going to base this on just straight up sound quality. Unfortunately, I don't have a specific ranking for gaming yet. Maybe that's something we can work on in the future. Let me know down in the comments if that's something that you want to see. I'm going to give the H6 Air a 5 out of 10. And this is going to sound harsh to anybody who's unfamiliar with our ranking system, but we consider the entire range of possible sound quality available to us. And for that, this is right in the middle of the road. And for context, I gave the MDR MV1 a 5.5 out of 10. So this being slightly behind makes sense. I will say, if you go to the official rankings up on headphones.com, where we've broken it down into bass, mids, treble, X Factor, and comfort, both the MV1 and the H6 Air get the highest score that I have for comfort. So these both get 9 out of 10 for comfort. You could say this is 10 out of 10 for comfort as well. I think the only thing I would change is really to have a slightly wider headband strap, but that's it. So again, for anybody who was wanting to make an intelligent decision for headphones, both the MV1 and the H6 Air are strong candidates in that regard. And that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.